Hello guys, how are you doing? Today we are going to talk about icebergs. You probably already know how this kind of video works, but first let's see some warnings. Credits to the author of the iceberg are in the image you are seeing on the screen right now, and most importantly, this style of video is generally focused on horror. But in this iceberg, we will not deal with any scary themes, but I still warn you that eventually some sensitive topics will appear in some games. So I emphasize here that this video is for an adult audience who is not bothered by these sensitive topics. These games are listed in order of popularity, not necessarily quality, so don't be alarmed if a tier 5 game seems to be better than a tier 1 game. And some of these games may have separate videos here on the channel someday, I still don't know. But well, enough rambling, this video is going to be long, so let's go. Big Rigs is a 2003 racing game developed by Stellar Stone and published by Game Mill Publishing. The player controls a truck and competes with a completely immobile opponent through checkpoints on US truck roads. It's exactly what you heard. The other racer in this game doesn't move. None of the objects present in the scene have any physics. You can cross inside any of them. Your truck is extremely light, and sometimes strange things can happen. And when you finish one of the races, you receive the most encouraging image of all, and the sound of silence. Superman 64 is an action game developed and published by Titus Interactive for the Nintendo 64. This game follows the cliché that was common at the time it was released. You need to enter a virtual world and save someone. Everyone knows what the worst part of this game is: the rings. The entire game overwhelms you with useless objectives. Moving Superman is horrible, and good luck trying to make a turn. This game is ugly, the models are basic, and considering that this is a game from 1999, a lot of better things could have been delivered. Just to give you an idea, that same year it was released Super Smash Bros. 64. Sonic 06 is a sandbox-style action platform game developed by Sonic Team and published by Sega. The game's story follows the basic, fighting against Eggman and his robots and save a princess. However, what many people don't know is that the bad story this game has is only in Sonic's campaign. Silver and Shadow's stories are better, and the game's soundtrack can be good sometimes, but don't get used to the praise in this video. You remember this happened. The game followed the failure formula, being produced by a small team that was constantly rushed by Sega and arriving on the market full of bugs. I thought being a Gen Z boy would make it difficult for me to say why an Atari game is bad, but let's go. This game took just over 5 weeks to be developed, and oh my god, how confusing and ugly this game is. Atari games tend to be quite intuitive due to the limitations of the time, but this game is not intuitive at all. You need to collect 3 pieces of an interplanetary telephone, but good luck figuring it out on your own. You have these little guys there who try to get in your way, but just ignore them. And this game still has that story about the New Mexico desert where some characters were buried. In this game, you control a former Vietnam fighter in a biker gang-themed environment. The game's story is executed in an extremely bad way in a game full of bugs and characters with horrible designs, and this game even had the courage to put adult themes in it, with people fully dressed. Action 52 is an unlicensed multi-card game compilation developed for the Nintendo Entertainment System and the Sega Genesis. According to Wikipedia, the creator of Action 52 was Vince Perry, a businessman from Miami, who had the idea of creating the game when he saw his son playing a similar compilation made in Taiwan. However, it's impossible to find any precise information or even a picture of this man on the internet. And about the game, this cheetah man alone was reason enough for this game to be on this iceberg. As you can imagine, many of these compilations will appear in this video, and surprisingly none of these 52 games managed to be fun. Most of them are too basic and completely boring. Bad shooting up games, bad horror games, bad French cook games. Play at your own risk. This one is a classic of bad games. Bubsy 3D is a game that gives you the feeling that it's not finished yet. These maps just don't feel complete. Bubsy's acceleration is ridiculous. In just a few seconds, he starts running too fast and becomes impossible to be controlled. The game's camera is terrible, and the chaotic map doesn't help you find your objective at all. And your objective in this game is to rebuild your rocket that crashed on this planet. But even if you don't pick up any item during the map, when you reach the end of it, the game will still say that you found a piece. Even the developers wanted to save you from exploring this unfinished map. If you watched my video about my collection, you know I said I like this game, but I still must recognize your weaknesses. After all, a game that dragged on for 14 long years can't be perfect. The game was released in 2011, but it was made with the mentality of the 90s, forcing Duke Nukem Forever to debut as an old game, which greatly harmed the game at the time, not being a new game but rather a mix of concepts that had been developed in the last century. Flatout 3 Chaos and Destruction is an action racing game developed by Team 6 Game Studios and published by Strategy First. I confess that I have never played a game from this franchise before. The game isn't ugly, but it's lost in a limbo. Racing games are either realistic like Forza or have some other fun appeal like Burnout or Mario Kart, but Flatout 3 is just forgettable. I can't think of a reasonable reason to play this game again in my life. It's that kind of game that you open, play for a few minutes, and the next day you have forgotten you played it. This is an average game developed by Gearbox Software. Unlike Big Rigs and Bubsy 3D that we saw previously, this game's not unplayable or a complete disaster. Of course, it has weaknesses such as ugly graphics, boring characters and bad artificial intelligence. A few years later, Alien Isolation was released, and since that game was excellent, it ended up overshadowing this game even more. I played this game back in the day, and honestly, it's just that, a game that no one cares about. Well, I was a child of the 2000s, so PlayStation 2 was a very important part of my childhood, and seeing Grand Theft Auto 3, Vice City and San Andreas being remade sounded like a dream to me. However, despite all the bugs, the graphical improvements were disappointing. I remember finding GTA 3 little beautiful, since it was the oldest game, but the rest of the trilogy was disgusting. In addition to the graphical improvements being irrelevant, horrible design decisions were made, like this horrible rain, and at the time the game was launched, for some reason you had these white lines outlining the characters. Why? Just why? The game does not have any fog, which made the map look like a giant scale model. This game was a huge disappointment, and the lack of affection for Rockstar's most important franchise was something that many people did not expect, since Rockstar has always been known for being a company that demanded a lot of quality in its games. Sonic Boom: Rise of Lyric is a platform game developed by Big Red Button and published by Sega for the Wii U, a bad game for a bad console. Something similar happens here to what happened with Alien Colonial Marines. In the year that this game was released, other better games like Mario Kart were released, which end up showing how mediocre and bad this game was, in addition to classic bad game problems such as bugs and almost no existent progression. The game ends up being quite boring. Perhaps this game can be enjoyed by small children, since the game's visuals are quite beautiful, and that same year a cartoon of the same name had been released. Lord of the Rings Gollum is a game from last year. The Lord of the Rings universe is very vast, and I really thought this would be a good game to explore more of this universe and characters. After all, Gollum is a good Tolkien character, but he was extremely wasted in this game. The game map would be beautiful if it were a 2010 game. NPCs are dumb, and the game has the courage to try to sell a DLC of emotes. Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 5 is a game in the Tony Hawk series developed by Robomodo, it's a fun name, and Disruptive Games and distributed by Activision, a game that was more disappointing than anything else, presenting several technical flaws such as a confusing camera and collision problems, selling just a few copies. Balan Wonderworld is a game published by Square Enix. I feel like this game is another one of those that sinned by being too simple. Personally, I think this game is beautiful and reminds me of another game that I really like, Nights into Dreams. However, the game fails a lot when it comes to putting the story into practice and becomes a boring and tiring game. At first glance, it has a good story, but terrible gameplay. Night Trap is a 1992 game developed by Digital Pictures and released by Sega for the Sega CD. The game is based on the use of full motion video, basically an interactive video. In this game, you need to investigate a family's house where teenagers disappeared at parties held there, impersonating one of them. Honestly, I imagine this game is here for two main reasons. Firstly, some of the acting may have aged like milk in the sun, which sounds like a bad thing these days, along with poor image quality. Just take a look.
If you don't have the brains or the guts for this assignment, give the controls to someone who does.
And secondly, this game had scenes that at the time were quite controversial, but maybe this is the best of the worst. I truly believe this is a good game. A CDI is not a game, but a digital optical disc data storage format that was mostly developed by the Dutch company Philips, who eventually became best known for its games. If you, like me, have been using YouTube since its inception, you probably remember the lost art of YouTube poops. These videos edits loved using cutscenes from these games. All CDI games are bad, but what catches the most attention is that Mario and Zelda franchises were allowed to be used in CDI, which ended up generating the games that popularized the famous memes. Besides the horrible gameplay, the cutscenes draw attention due to their very low quality. Everything seems to have been done in Microsoft Paint by someone who doesn't know how to use Microsoft Paint.
richer.
Help!
Drake of the 99 Dragons is a third-person shooter game developed by the Swedish studio Idle FX. In this game, you control Drake, an undead hitman who works for a Hong Kong gang. The story is told by Drake himself, who apparently isn't very good at it. It seems like the only thing he's good at is walking around in a weird way, shooting everything in front of him. Just compare this to Devil May Cry, for example, to understand how bad this game is.
Have aid from beyond this world.
Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde is a classic book written by Robert Louis Stevenson. The story revolves around Dr. Henry Jekyll, a respected and mild-mannered scientist who conducts experiments to separate the good and evil aspects of his personality. In the process, he creates a potion that transforms him into the monster Mr. Edward Hyde. The game is divided into two maps. The objective is the same: reach a church. Playing as Dr. Jekyll, you walk around the city during the day, but the citizens and the animals of this place try to get in your way and irritate you. The angrier you get, the more your anger bar increases. If it reaches the maximum, you become Mr. Hyde, and the map becomes an evil version of the city. Here, the city is full of monsters and now you can fight them. The game is now reversed. You need to defeat a certain number of monsters to calm down and become Dr. Jekyll again. The game is set in Half-Life universe, serving as a fun Maid spin-off. The game follows Sergeant Mitchell, a soldier in the United States Marine Corps who survives the events of the 7-Hour War. The game suffered from numerous technical issues, including poor optimizations, bugs, and lackluster graphics, even continued accusations of copyright infringement. The game may have initially caught the attention of Half-Life fans, but it certainly doesn't hold anyone's attention. The game based on the never-ending film franchise that always starts with someone looking for Vin Diesel and ends with the cast together drinking beer and talking about family. The game surprisingly managed to have a bad car gameplay in a game where you spend the entire game inside a car. The graphics of the scenarios are not ugly, but the characters...
Tell us about the attack.
If football is not a single game, but a franchise of football games, I'm honestly not a big fan of sports games, so I don't really know why these games are on the iceberg. I played the game for a few minutes and it seems like an okay game to me, so I will leave it to the football fans to say why this game is bad in the comments. Maid Number 9 is a side-scrolling action platformer game. This game has a specific problem. It was founded by Kickstarter, and knowing that there was money from fans involved is something very sad. This game was supposed to be a spiritual successor to Mega Man, but despite the expectations that the name Mega Man brought, Maid Number 9 received mixed to negative reviews. Fans cited various issues, including bad graphics, inconsistent design choices, and technical problems, and I challenge you to explain to me why this guy wears a tongue.
We must make for the laboratory, and quickly.
The Quiet Man is an action-adventure game developed by Human Head Studios and published by Square Enix. The protagonist, Dan, is a deaf man who for some reason appeared in the scene as if he understood what this guy said.
The savages are out tonight, kid. Be careful.
Okay, the game is basically a 3-hour long interactive movie with terrible acting. These actors were probably paid with just a big thank you. The story isn't bad, but it has some funny points, like the game tried to convince you that these bandits are super dangerous, but that they are never using firearms for some reason. This game is 3 hours long, but sometimes it's so slow that it feels like 30 hours.
What the hell, man? You're stupid.
Daikatana is a first-person shooter game developed by Ion Storm and released in 2000. The game was notable for its association with John Romero, one of the creators of Doom, but unfortunately Daikatana faced a troubled development. The game's narrative involves the protagonist Hiro Miyamoto and his quest to stop the villain of the game, Keiji Mishima, who has taken control of a powerful sword known as Daikatana. I personally love this style of game, but I couldn't have fun with it. Maybe another example of how overhype can make a game a failure. This was an adult romantic comedy dating simulator published by Kiri Entertainment for the 3DO. Again, we are talking about a full motion video clip. The only interaction is where the player interacts with a DVD menu style manner. Also, there are only two right choices. The player will use the D-pad to make a choice and then will press the A button to see what will happen for choosing that option. At certain points in the game, the player has the opportunity to choose what actions the characters will do. Making the right choices will bring the characters together, while making the wrong choices will result in some commentaries from the game's narrators, who sometimes fight with each other. I think this is humor. If enough bad choices are made, the player is given the choice to restart the game or try to make the right choice again. It's like you are controlling one of those dating shows that everyone knows isn't completely spontaneous, besides the horrible performances that are a trademark of this style of game. Saints Row is an action-adventure game developed by Volition and published by Deep Silver. It is a reboot of the Saints Row series and was released in 2022. The game suffered from a common problem in modern games, being released full of bugs and depending on future fixes. I will give my honest opinion here. I like this franchise, but I never thought it was brilliant. These are games that have always been acceptable, but never perfect, and I think this is one of those cases. It's not a complete disaster, just another game that is meh.
Lucrative than it used to be. I was hoping your bosses would be interested in.
This iceberg topic refers to the company Data Design Interactive, which produced a series of bad games mainly for the Nintendo Wii. The Nintendo Wii was a console that was very popular among casual audiences, like families who liked to play video games together, so a huge number of family-friendly games were released at that time. Most of these games are of very low quality, as this is not a very demanding audience, something close to what I said when we talked about Sonic Boom. In this game, the United States has sent you on a mission into North Korea. First-person shooters are generally very simple in their gameplay, so it's desirable that these games have other strengths, such as a well-told story or being able to pilot different war vehicles. But this game leaves all that aside to be the perfect definition of just walk and shoot. If you want to play a war game that tells the story of the Korean conflict, just play Homefront as a normal person. It's another one of those family-friendly games made for a Nintendo console that I mentioned earlier. Mario Party is a good example of a family game, obviously using Nintendo characters such as Mario and Donkey Kong helps a lot, but the quality of Mario Party games is undeniable. But this game, it's just that, a bad family game with no personality that was made for a console that ended up failing. Postal 3 is a third-person shooter game released in 2011. It was developed by Trashmasters and running with scissors. The game is based on Postal Dude's choices in a chaotic world filled with dark humor. Just like in Postal 2, you can choose a good or a bad path, but this time with a karma meter, just like in Red Dead Redemption 2. What a horrible comparison I just made, right? Your choices influence the game's story. Reactions from Postal's fans has been quite mixed according to Vince Daisy, the head of Running with Scissors. The point is that Postal 2 is fun with its absurd world, but Postal 3 failed to replicate the chaotic energy of the previous game. Postal 3 even received a tribute in the form of an Easter egg in the next game in the franchise, which clearly illustrates the failure that this game was. Again, an Atari game. Pac-Man is a simple game and always has been. However, this version takes away all the charm and beauty that the game has. Despite the gameplay not having undergone any changes, the entire game is empty and dull. In my opinion, this game is another average game, but compared to other games in the franchise, it becomes bad. Its setting is very different from other games in this franchise, but it's still a beautiful and enjoyable game. The biggest problem is the chunky controls, so playing this game ends up becoming a test of patience.
A female, described as Caucasian, brunette, and wearing a ponytail.
To be honest, I see the games in this franchise as just stupid humor for you to play with your friends. It's like Family Guy. I never watch full episodes, but I love sending funny excerpts from random episodes to my friends. As is common in this series, its only personality is to appeal to an adult audience, and they didn't even do that right, since this game is not as explicit as its predecessor. Besides, this is a PS3 and Xbox 360 game, but I swear I've seen much prettier things on the PlayStation 2. Damn, what a terrible graphics.
Larry, I've always liked you. Maybe it's because you remind me of myself.
This is not a game, but an American company that made several educational games for the PlayStation 2. Most of them based on famous fairy tales or just simple games. The big highlight is the cover of these games, which has one of the worst 3D models I've seen in my life. These games are extremely boring, even for a child. I mean, I consumed better entertainment than these when I was a child. The games contain 2D animations that look more like the bastard children of CDI's animations, and the games that don't look like these just look like bad mobile games. Oh my god, this is a Kinect game for Xbox One. It was taking a while for the bastard child from Xbox One to appear here. Motion capture is the main mechanic of this game, but it works in a terrible way. Why am I not surprised? If Rogue Warrior was mediocrity in war games, this is mediocrity in fighting games. Takeshi's no Chosenjo is a unique game released in 1986 for the Famicom, the Japanese version of the Nintendo Entertainment System. The game was designed by the Japanese comedian Takeshi Kitano, who is known for his work in comedy and acting. This game sometimes reminds me of the side missions from the Like a Dragon franchise, because here the objectives are to quit your job, get divorced and sing in a karaoke. And with singing, I literally mean singing. In this game, you need to sing in Japanese using the microphone on the controller. Anata no tame na ya doko made mo tsuite yukeo watashi setsunai omoi wo uta ni shite Ame Fuyo Shinkaichi. What the f? So I think the bad part of this game is the language barrier. As I don't speak Japanese, I had to play this game following a tutorial, and this takes away a lot of the immersion and the fun of the game. But the game itself, I didn't think was bad, just difficult to play when you don't speak any Japanese. Batman Dark Tomorrow is a linear stealth action game. You know the worst part of this game? I didn't find many reports about bugs and criticism about the game being rushed at the time it was released, which tells us that this game is just naturally bad. Here, I'm going to give all the highlights to the camera, which I personally find this angle very strange. Bible Adventures is a Christian game made by Wisdom Tree, first released in 1991 for the Nintendo Entertainment System. The game is a collection of 3 different games that tell 3 different biblical stories, being then Noah's Ark, the story of baby Moses, and David and Goliath. The least worst game is Noah's for sure. Here you need to find different animals around the map and take them back to the ark. And despite the bad controls, you can be distracted for 5 or 10 minutes. In Moses' game, you need to run with the baby escaping from the fire soldiers, and in the game of David and Goliath, you need to collect sheep. I don't know why they did this. Wasn't it better to emphasize the part of the story that everyone knows? The levels are extremely repetitive, and this game remind me too much of Super Mario Bros. 2. And guess what other game this company made? Hong Kong 97 is a shoot-'em-up game made in Japan for the Super Nintendo in 1995, created by Happy Soft, a Japanese homebrew game company. The game was designed by a Japanese journalist called Yoshihisa Kurosawa, who said the game was made in just 1 week. The game's plot is set around the transfer of sovereignty of Hong Kong, and it's up to your character, who is said to be a relative of Bruce Lee, to combat Japanese soldiers and a deadly weapon that the government is developing, which is just a bad PNG of the head of Deng Xiaoping, the man who ruled China between 1978 and 1992. The game is extremely difficult, ugly and unfair. A single damage already gives you a game over that takes you to an image of a man who is not alive. This game never gets tired of getting worse, and the biggest meme in this game, the song that plays in an eternal loop. This game features the professional basketball player Shaquille O'Neal as a playable character. According to the game's story, Shaquille O'Neal entered a Kung Fu dojo before going to a charity basketball game in Japan. Inside there, he ends up in another dimension where he is forced to save a boy named Nezu from an evil mummy called Setha. Okay. Honestly, the only appeal of this game is having a very popular basketball player as a character, because fights are terrible. Repetitive movements, your enemies sometimes only make the same 2 or 3 attacks, and look at this map! He's cute running there. Spyro is the purple dragon that everyone knows. I played this game when I was a child and I was surprised to see it here. In this game, the negative points are more evident in the technical parts of the game, such as numerous bugs, glitches, controls, collision detections, and a rushed development. There's not much to talk about. One of the worst changes ever made. Why change the design of this cute guy for a super edgy android? Come on, Bomberman, there aren't many things to change in this formula. I wonder who thought it would work to destroy a visual identity that had worked for years. Definitely one of the dumbest decisions in the story of gaming industry. All the changes are so drastic and annoying that they make this seem like a bad game that is trying to copy Bomberman, not a game from the Bomberman franchise. These are two Simpsons games, one about skateboarding and one about wrestling. Both games are a caricature of their styles, a boring skateboarding game and a boring wrestling game. Its only appeal is having Simpsons characters in this game, something quite common at the time the game was released, but it's pretty obvious that this doesn't sustain a game. Why I have the impression that migrating two different Kaisers to 3D never works. Oh, it's true, it's your fault. Just like we just saw in Bomberman Act Zero, this game has none of the visual identity that was common in the franchise, and it certainly won't remind you of an arcade. Why? Just why? I mean, Streets of Rage 4 is a modern game, but it has remained faithful to its origins. Why you guys insist in changing formulas that are working? First of all, I don't know if I think this menu is beautiful or ugly. I'm confused. This is a robot fighting game, and congratulations to the developers, these characters really move like robots. I've never seen a fight game with such a hard and limited movement. Just look what I did to win this fight. Exciting, right? One of the most confusing games I ever played. The objective here is to protect the campers from Jason, but good luck trying to do that. The game has some cool things, like a day-night cycle with Jason becomes more aggressive at night, but the positive points end there. The other monsters in the game are practically harmless since the damage they cause is very slow. Moving around inside houses is very confusing, and I only met Jason once, and he killed me. I know you can fight him in Punch-Out style, but that's kinda ridiculous to be honest. Water levels have always had the reputation of being bad, so how about making a game that takes place entirely underwater? Do you know when you are underwater in a pool or in the sea and your movements are limited? You can punch, you can run. That's exactly what happens in this game. Aquaman is extremely slow and doesn't even seem like he's an aquatic hero. Besides, Aquaman has never been a popular hero. To be honest, people have been joking about how useless his powers are since I was a kid. Why did they think that making a story about such an unpopular hero would be a good idea? But I have to admit that his hair is beautiful. It's common for companies to explore popular franchises without worrying about the quality of the final product. It's no wonder Mega Man 7 is considered one of the worst in the franchise. Here the movements are quite slow, unlike other games in the series. The use of a 3D world was also not well applied here, adding another game to the list of innovations that had everything to be good but became a failure. Life of Black Tiger is a game released in 2017 for the PlayStation 4 and mobile platforms, and notice how this sentence is a red flag. The game looks more like a mobile game than a PlayStation 4 game. Gameplay involves control a black tiger in various environments, fight with other wild animals and hunters, and complete missions to survive. The game contains low-quality visuals and awkward animations. The game gained attention just for its negative reception, leading to discussions about the quality of certain games released on the PlayStation 4 at the time. Lula 3D is an adventure game for adult people developed and published by CDV Software. In this game, you are an actress who makes that kind of movies and need to save your friends who make that kind of movies, who were kidnapped. Here the problem repeats itself. It seems that when people think about making a game focused on adult people, this is the only thing they can imagine. The game is ugly, bad, dull, and its only personality is trying to take advantage of the fact that at the time the game was released, the internet was not like it's today, to try to capture the attention of some adult with this. Custer's Revenge is a controversial adult game released in 1982 for the Atari. The player controls a character named General Custer, a parody of General George Armstrong Custer, famous for the Battle of Little Big Horn. Your objective is to guide Custer through a screen filled with arrows to reach a Native American woman who is tied to a post, and do with her exactly what you are imagining. The game is horrible and was obviously criticized for the way it represented a woman, and its adult theme is the only characteristic of the game, being extremely mediocre. Infestation Survival Stories, formerly known as The War Z, is an open-world zombie video game developed by Hammerpoint Interactive and published by OP Productions. Infestation features both first-person and third-person shooting perspective. The game offers players the option of killing zombies or playing against other users. I read some reports, and to make matters worse, the game is still infested by hackers. It's serious? This looks like a bad mobile game, and as incredible as it may seem, this game was licensed by Toyota and it's based on the line of Yaris subcompact cars. The game was released in 2007, but was later delisted from the Xbox Live Marketplace in 2008, surprising a total of 0 people. Captain Novolin is a platformer game released in 1992 for the Super Nintendo. The game is notable for its educational focus on diabetes awareness and management. What makes this game unique is its educational aspect, specifically aimed at raising awareness about diabetes. Captain Novolin himself is portrayed as a character with diabetes, and you must guide him through various platforming levels while managing his blood sugar levels. Your enemies here are sugary foods, which are harmful for people with diabetes, and throughout each level you need to collect healthy foods. Despite these unique features, the game is boring and not fun. The idea is good, but badly executed, something that is common in this Iceberg, which shows that creating games is not as easy as it seems. This game also doesn't seem to have been finished. The models are extremely simple and this game is from 2021. I like this style of game where you have an open map and you need to collect items around the map. But guess what? Games from 20 years ago do this better than this game. CD the Dummy is a 3D adventure game released for the PlayStation 2, Nintendo Wii and PlayStation Portable. A dummy is one of these. Usually these dummies are used in testing, for example determining whether a car is safe or not. It's kind of obvious that this isn't a very charismatic character, right? The graphics are dated even for a Nintendo Wii game, and I feel like this game is a bad Mega Man cosplay. The Crawl City of Angels is a game for Sega Saturn, PlayStation and Microsoft Windows. It's based on the movie of the same title. The gameplay style is similar to a traditional 6-directional side-scroller beaten up, viewed from an isometric perspective. All objects and characters are 3D polygonal models imposed over 2D pre-rendered backgrounds. As expected, the game follows the same story as the film, and the camera sometimes seems to be playing against you. There is a big difference between a dark, intimidating and immersive setting and an ugly one. Look, dark, intimidating and immersive, ugly. Dark, intimidating and immersive, ugly. Dark, intimidating and immersive, ugly.
Hey, clown face.
The Town with No Name is a Western action-adventure point-and-click game. The game is one of the precursors of shitpost. Once again, we are seeing a game that looks like a drawing made in Microsoft Paint. The voices are terrible and the acting is a disgrace. Just take a look.
It sure is a quiet town. Not many people.
There are a great many people, stranger, but most of them are dead.
Next you'll be telling me you don't like strangers round here.
Yeah, I think CDI games are better.
Closing time.
Godus is a mobile game, where you play the role of a god guiding a civilization. The game is one of those that is never finished. It promised a lot of things, several new mechanics for the game, but in the end the developers were unable to keep their promises, leaving this game abandoned and without relevant changes, with several fans left in the lurch. This game was so bad that the developers simply removed it from the stores and refunded players who bought the game. They even apologized, nice guys. But what is this game? A battle royale that tried to take advantage of that time when everyone liked battle royales, promising that it would be different from everything else, but it's kind of obvious what happened at the end of the story. Here you are a magical girl who rides on a flying scooter and collects items called stardusts, while shooting missiles at giant circles in order to open a portal. Are you sure this isn't a Nintendo Switch game? This game looks like a bad mobile game, or that game with the giant green head.
Where did you learn to fly?
I even found some sources that say this is the worst game on the Nintendo Switch. Honestly, that wouldn't be a surprise. This game has already received a full video here on this channel. This is a puzzle game where you need to position different rats correctly to activate traps on each map. The game doesn't work right, the characters are poorly made, and the game is extremely boring. There are more than 40 maps, all repetitive and full of errors. In this game you have 4 paths to follow, in each of them a fate worse than the other. The enemies here are extremely uncreative and your only way to protect yourself is to throw stones, and oh my god, how difficult it's to throw stones in this game. It seems like your character has a mind of his own. Sometimes the game throws dozens of enemies at you, and I doubt you will make it out alive. Everything in this game is confusing and chaotic. There's a big difference between make a game that's difficult and make a game that's just annoying. The Guy game is an adult game for the PlayStation 2 and first Xbox. The game is like one of those quiz shows you would see on television a few years ago, but the people answering the questions are women wearing bikinis who needed to show off their, in case they answer incorrectly. This would have everything to be just a mediocre game that is begging for attention using these images, but the problem is that one of these girls was only 17 years old, which made owning and selling copies of this game illegal in several countries. A temporary injunction was granted prohibiting the further production of copies of the game that contained the girl's image, voice and name, to protect the image of a minor, but unfortunately some copies had already been sold. A Wii game where you control tires or a vehicle called SPOG. Obviously this will never work. Beyond the simple and lifeless graphics, this game does what the Simpsons game did. Be a game that only does the minimum of what its game genre does, but this time without any charismatic characters, because I doubt you like a tire with an ugly picture inside. Where's Waldo is a hidden object game developed by Bethesda Softworks and published by THQ for the Nintendo Entertainment System. The game simulates the Where's Waldo books, where you need to find him in 8 different levels. At first it's even difficult to understand where he is, since everything is square and small in this game, but once you get used to it, it becomes easier. This game is extremely short and not fun at all. Definitely just was made to try to make some money using the name of an already famous brand. There is no reason for you to play this game. If you want to play Where's Waldo, go buy a book. I will read the synopsis of this game on the PlayStation Store for you. After a powerful biotechnology was legalized in 2048 in Canada, the cult of symbiote forced their way in as regulators in the Maritimes. Despite their presentation as protectors and healers, the cult has ruined many lives with their ambitions. This sounds epic, right? No, this is surprisingly not a bad game lost in the depths of Steam. This is on PlayStation 4. Besides being obviously ugly, there are several reports of people commenting that they tried playing this game for a while and saw that the game is infested with that adult things. You know what I'm talking about. Now, combine this information with the look of these characters. It's fuel for nightmares, isn't it? Little Britain, the video game, is a collection of minigames by the British studios Gamerholics and Game Souls for the PlayStation 2. Based on a British TV show of the same name, the game is made up of different minigames that are quite simple, like roller skating, and they are all executed in a disastrous way. Furthermore, the games are too simple to be enjoyed. I highly doubt anyone will think this is fun. This game is based on the American television series Alf. The player controls Alf, who must collect the necessary items to solve puzzles to repair his spaceship. The whole game looks like it was designed by a child. It's very simple, but not in a pretty way, but in a lazy way. The movements are slow and you can't touch anything. Sometimes I didn't even understand what killed me. I confess that when I went looking for this game, this image gave me a bad impression, but I soon discovered that this game has a shoot 'em up level and I tried to feel better. These girls appear out of nowhere, oh my god, who are you? The font they choose for the game's text makes them painful to read, and look at this game is from 2014. But doesn't it seem like I'm talking about a bad Sega Genesis game? I didn't find much information about this topic, so the credits for the few things I discovered about this game go to the Sonic Hatter website. This is a loose adaptation of Sonic Gen for the Sega Saturn. It was released on the short-lived Tiger Game Con, exclusively in North America. It's a pseudo-compilation of 3 Sonic the Hedgehog games originally released for the Sega Mega Drive: Sonic the Hedgehog 2, Sonic the Hedgehog 3, and Sonic & Knuckles. Sonic Jam for the Game Con does not contain entire games. Each game contains only the first respective zone that consists only on 4 acts each. This is a 1987 Japanese game for the Famicom home console. The game is a science fiction RPG where you must use physical powers to fight your enemies. I thought I was just stupid for finding this game extremely confusing, but researching for this video, it seems like everyone agrees with me. The game just lets you loose in the world and good luck trying to understand what you need to do without the help of a tutorial. I thought the first enemies in the game would be easy to fight, but no! I lost almost every fight I got into. The pixel art in this game is terrible, so you won't find any reason to stay in it. Just compare this with other games of that time. Even the Mickey game is prettier. Digital Homicide Studios was an American game developer. The studio made some games for computer like The Slaughtering Grounds, Krog Wars and Paranormal Psychosis. In addition to the games, I imagine that this topic is on the iceberg because of all the controversy surrounding this story, such as all of the developers' games being removed from Steam and all lawsuits involving the name of this company. It seems like a really long story that, to be honest, I didn't even know existed, but as you can see, it took on huge proportions. Fight for Life is a 1996 fighting game developed and published for the Atari Jaguar. This game takes place in a kind of purgatory. Oh my god, this is so edgy. The criticism I've made so far about fighting games, from this Iceberg being repetitive, uncreative, and a kind of caricature of their own game styles, are much more present here. A game with lifeless scenarios, bad movements, that's based only on two 3D models hitting each other. But I have to admit that this game has one cool thing. Here you will begin with just a few special moves, but when you defeat your enemies, you can steal two special moves from them, and then you can build your own fighter, so this is kinda cool. Okay, this is scary. But keep in mind that we are talking about the NIS. It's very likely that this game was created thinking about turning this character into the company's mascot. This was something very common at that time, and you can see that this game even received some love. After all, I actually like its design, and the music in this game is really good. However, it seems like they focused too much on this aspect and forget about the gameplay, which is very boring and repetitive. This is very sad. Maybe if they had tried harder, maybe this game would be remembered today. For this game, I need you to picture yourself in a boat on a river with tangerine trees and marmalade skies. I never used that thing that people in Woodstock like it, but I imagine that the feeling is exactly like this. In this game, you are a bubblegum princess walking through an extremely colorful world with an old man on a horse. Eventually, the game suddenly puts you to fight a ghast alligator man and a giant snake that teleports you back to the colorful world. And guess what? Only after researching about this game, I discovered that this game is based on the Chinese classic Journey to the West, and that guy on the horse is Xiao Wujing, an important character in Buddhist story. I'm very interested in Asian religions, and I would have enjoyed this game a lot if it had at least told me what it's supposed to be. How could I imagine that this is the same as this? At first glance, I found it interesting that this game takes place in Iran. We don't see many games in that part of the world, but where do we start? The characters have the same charisma as Adore, the voice actors are really bad and the graphics aren't horrible, but come on, it's a 2015 game. This is the worst bad copy of GTA I ever seen in my life. It's pretty obvious that this game tries to look like GTA San Andreas, but ends up looking like a poorly made mobile game in 2012. I wouldn't be surprised if I found out that this was the first game made by a beginner programming student. You don't even need to like video games to see how unfinished this game is. I just wonder why. A game the size of GTA San Andreas is very difficult to make. Why did they think they could do it? The entire visual identity of the Rockstar's game is trying to be represented here. You know, that unique atmosphere of Los Santos on the PlayStation 2, but this doesn't even look like a beta version of GTA. Top Banana is an environmentally themed platform game produced for the Acorn Archimedes in 1991 and ported to the Amiga. The game is described as being influenced by techno and rave culture. But however, this is more like the videos from User 666 that everyone was afraid of 11 years ago. Does anyone still remember this guy? The game seemed interesting at first glance because its opening reminded me of LSD Dream Emulator, but seriously, couldn't there be a worse design to choose from? I swear, this is not a glitch, the game really looks like this. The worst part is that this game tries to be serious. I'm going to read an excerpt from the game manual for you. Our planet is under threat. Not from slimy aliens or evil wizards, but from direct consequences of our own greed and stupidity. Every moment, since further demolition of the rainforest, more leaky nuclear waste, land floods caused by melting ice caps, and much needed food rotting in locked warehouses. Okay, the game seems to be concerned about the environment, but this game really thought the best way to talk about it would be with a ton of visual pollution on my screen? Ironic. Cassette 50 is a compilation of games published by Cascade Games in 1993 for multiple 8-bit home computers. It was promoted based on the quantity of games included. Exactly, quantity and not quality. Just like in Action 52, this is just a compilation of bad games whose only appeal was the large number of games being sold together, something that was sold as the pinnacle of technology at the time. Oh my god, what's wrong with PlayStation 4? This game tries to be one of those narrative games, but it looks more like a bad PlayStation 2 game. Your character walks as if he has an iron ball stuck to his foot, and instead of being an interesting narrative game, it ends up being just annoying. This was the first licensed World Cup game based on the 1986 World Cup that took place in Mexico. The game has 10 teams in the version for Commodore 64, being then Uruguay, Italy, Germany, Brazil, England, Argentina, France, Spain, Mexico and Scotland. Matches last 3 minutes and follow all the rules of a common football match. Here you can't make any changes in your team, just choose yours and go play. Particularly in my opinion, sports games only started to be good around the time of PlayStation 1, so obviously I didn't get anything fun out of this game. Oh, and the version that I managed to play and that you are seeing in the background right now is the Commodore 64 version, because the ZX Spectrum version looks like this. First of all, getting this game to work was a nightmare, because we are talking about the ZX Spectrum version where I apparently can't move. I thought this was a problem with my computer, but it seems you need to use something called poke to make this game work. Putting in simple and summarized words, it's like you need a code to make the game work, and I doubt anyone had the goodwill to be interested in making this work, making this game literally unplayable in most cases. Unfortunately, this is an extremely generic name, but I assume that's the game in question. A Chinese game that doesn't support another language, making it almost impossible to play. I couldn't open it myself, but I highly doubt that a game that looks more like a Facebook game has anything good to offer. This game was focused on home computer platforms like Commodore 64, ZX Spectrum, and Amiga. The game is known for its attempt to capitalize on the popularity of Street Fighter series. The characters are practically immobile, even though this is a fighting game, movements are extremely limited. The first opponent is a Soviet soldier and after him a dog. While I move slowly, he moves too quickly for me to understand what is happening, and for some reason I wasn't getting any damage, and this problem continued even with me restarting the game and moving to the next fight, so I don't know what to do. This game is very obscure and it was very difficult to find accurate information about it on the internet. Hareraiser was a game based on the book Masquerade and was sold with the objective of players trying to win a prize. The game is divided into two parts, Prelude and Finale. The solvers of Prelude would also have to buy and solve Finale. They could then enter a competition to locate the prize. That pendant featured on the cover of the game. The prize was worth £30,000 and would be awarded to the first winner of the game that found the hidden location that was located in the real world. But what is this game made of? The game is a title screen with the game rules and a series of graphical screens showing grass, sky and trees, with test clues at the top and the bottom of the screen. This is how the two parts of the game can be summarized. The hints at the top and the bottom of the screen are specific search instructions, but note that not all of the words in the hints are in order, and a numeric code was common to all copies of the game. The golden hair had previously been the prize for solving the book Masquerade by the British artist Kit Williams. It had been buried at a secret location, the object of the game being to solve the clues in the book that would lead the successful treasure hunter to this location and the prize. However, some sources say that this game was never actually based on Masquerade and that supposedly the only thing in common would be the prize in the form of a golden hair pendant. And other sources also say that Hareraiser would be a huge scam. The story of this game goes far beyond just being a bad game. There's a lot to talk about this game and the book, but it won't fit in this video since my objective here is to summarize these games. Maybe one day I will make a video just about this case, but for now I will leave a 30-minute video in the pinned comment that contains how this story unfolds. Well, we did it. I really hope you made it to the end of this video. If you are here, please leave a comment, like, subscribe. This video was very difficult to make and I really did my best. Iceberg videos are fun, but also a lot of hard work. I would also like to say thank you to all the long play channels that allow their footage to be used. Without you guys, this video would never be possible. All credits are in the description and pinned comment, but I would really like to say thank you here with using my voice. But well guys, maybe I will make more Iceberg videos, but in a while. I need to rest. I need to rest a little now. But I really hope you enjoyed this video and I see you next time.